they attained while writing it. So when we approach the book of Zohar, when we're reading in it, that's the only thing we need to aim for. We need, let's say this is you right now, and me, and all the rest of those who are watching on YouTube, on Facebook, it doesn't matter. And now we're reading the book of Zohar. We will in just a few minutes. When we're reading it, we're not looking to understand intellectually the writings. We're not looking to find corporeal meaning in it. What we're looking is simply to connect to that state that the Kabbalists wrote from. Now, there's actually a huge benefit that we are doing this together now. Now, what is this benefit? The benefit is that by reading the Zohar together, and even if you're watching this, in a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now, it doesn't matter, because in spirituality, there is no time. So, if you connect to this point that we're now building together, that we're now reading together, then you're connecting to the connection that we're building. And it doesn't matter if you're doing it right now, or in a day, or in a year, or in 100 years. You're connecting to a state of connection that we're building. And by building this connection, we're becoming like that group of Kabbalists, like Rabbi Shimon's group, that wrote the book of Zohar from their connection. So that's why reading together is so powerful. Now, I hope you have that in mind, because I want to give you these 5 tips, but you'll see that these 5 tips are really just a breakdown of that same beautiful quote we read from the Ramak, and that same explanation that I just gave of Rashbi and his students, his friends really, who wrote the book together. So let's take a look at these 5 tips that will just help guide us. So, tip number 1. Okay. The heart understands. Do not study with your intellect. So as I mentioned, the book was not written from intellect. Therefore, in order to tap into its true potential, you do not study with your intellect. You study with your heart, with your desire. With your desire for what? Simply to connect to that state that Rashbi and his friends, his students, wrote from and attained the world of Ein Sof. That's what we want to connect to when reading the book of Zohar. Tip number 2. Man is a small world. Interpreting the words correctly means that when we approach the book of Zohar, it contains all kinds of descriptions. Terms we know from this world, like the seas, like mountains, trees, flowers, animals, places, people, all kinds of things that we can easily say, okay, that's clear. But keep in mind that all of these details are strictly spiritual. They're talking about states that can be revealed inside of you. So if it talks about a mountain, search for this force called a mountain inside of you. If it talks about a color, search for that color, for the force inside of you. Alright? Tip number 3. Seek the light that reforms. This is probably the main one. Well, one of them at least. And seek the light that reforms is basically telling us, when you're reading the book here, that's what you should aim for. You should aim for this force. Why? Because when you do, what it leads to is that this force is called surrounding light. Kabbalah say it's the light that surrounds your soul. And if when reading you aim to seek that light, you're searching for that light, for that corrected state, for that state of connection, the same state Rashbi and his students sought after, that same state where they attained and wrote from. If you seek for that state, then you bring upon yourself this light that reforms, that corrects, that lifts, that brings you back to that good state. So that was tip number 3. And tip number 4, everything depends on the desire. So here I'll give an example. You might say, fine, but my desire is really small. What desire can I already raise, in comparison to great Kabbalists and spiritual beings that attain the highest spiritual states? Well, think of a baby that's crying. Them crying activates not only their parents and the whole family, but it activates industries to build for them tools and pacifiers or dummies, however you want to call it, in order to satisfy that desire of theirs. That single cry of a little baby activates all of these systems and industries. Similarly, even though you might still be a baby in spirituality, your cry actually, because of that, has much more strength in it, much more power, because it comes from an innocent place, not a place of like a child, like a baby crying. So you can take advantage of that, and you can really bring your desire, and it will be amplified. And lastly, as one man in one heart, connection is the key. This probably is, I said about number 3 that it's the main one, but actually number 5 is the amplifier for all of the previous ones. Why is that? It's due to the nature of the spiritual world. The spiritual world is simply a world of connection. Our world is a world of shattering, that this soul broke into pieces, into 8 billion pieces to be precise, and that's the only thing that's shattered in our reality. Everything you see around you that's evil, that's bad, wars and famine and I don't know, everything you can see that's bad is simply a result of this shattering. And the only thing that needs to change, the only thing that needs to be fixed is that shattering. So when we focus on this connection, even right now between us, so I brought the Rashbi group as the example, so this is the Rashbi group, but this is us. We can do the exact same thing. We now can also build this connection between us, just like Rashbi and his group did. And if we do, we're simply building the structure up here. We're amplifying the effect of what we have, because we only have a tiny dot, a small desire for spirituality. But as we begin to connect this desire, and connection is an internal matter, you can be listening passively without writing a word in the chat, you can be opening your heart in the chat. Both of them can be forms of connection. The intention for this connection is internal. So that was tip number 5. As